Your Wednesday forecast calls for mostly cloudy skies, a chance of showers or an isolated storm late in the day. Afternoon highs in the mid-70s. Wednesday night, chance of showers and storms after midnight, mostly cloudy, a low of 61. Thursday, sunny. Afternoon highs around 82. We're partly cloudy and 54 on Thursday night. By Friday, a chance of showers in the afternoon, mostly cloudy, a bit cooler, a high of 73. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Joe Thomas in the morning. Thank you for joining in with us. Rumble, YouTube, wherever you may be picking us up. Maybe there's some strange, Facebook Live. Somebody's refeeding it. Fans can do a lot of things. They're coming to you this morning from our Pyramid Paving Studios, and we've got a lot. Well, people like me, we say that all the time. Usually it's compensating for something. If you hear a host with a microphone or a camera attached to them and saying, we've got a lot to get into, it's because they don't believe they have doodly squat. But in this case, no, we have Chuck Smith, another one of the GOP hopefuls for U.S. Senate, is going to join us. Also, Michael Harrison, the publisher of Talkers Magazine, and it's a magazine. If you enjoy the spoken word, that's what the highbrows call what we do. It is. You have rock and roll radio, you have top 40 radio, you have country music radio, and you have the spoken word format. That means pretty much whatever we want it to mean. It's just a fancy word for people who aren't always necessarily that fancy. So we'll get a visit with him as well. Student loan cancellation, the president in Pennsylvania calling Donald Trump an elitist. I thought Donald Trump was an idiot. Can you guys get your story straight? Either he's the most brilliant Machiavellian politician since, Machiavelli, or he's a buffoon, but he can't. Isn't it frustrating because depending on the day of the week, they seem to be saying either he's an idiot or he's a genius. Can you pick one and stay with it, or maybe they think that their friends in the media just gobble it up, and just spew it out, and whatever you happen to hear is what you happen to hear. And they're counting on the 70% who are too damn busy trying to figure out, how am I going to afford my groceries this week? To sit and say, hold it, didn't they just say he was an idiot yesterday? And now they're saying he's the most brilliant mind that continues to fool us. Why that Roadrunner, we keep trying to hit him with these Acme missiles made in North Korea. President is also talking more student loan cancellation, and I want to get into this story because for everyone who tells me single payer is the way to go, the United Kingdom just voted, Parliament just voted, ironically, carrying the name of a cigarette brand, to phase out cigarette smoking. They will, or more appropriately, they say they're going to phase out cigarette smoking. What they're actually going to phase in is a cigarette smoking ban in England. Why? Because they're paying for your health care, and they can do that. See, that's what happens when somebody is pimping for you. They get to tell you what street corner to stand on. Yeah, I said it. They told me in rehearsal, don't say that, but sometimes you just call an audible and you go from there. And by the way, on the subject of how either idiotic or brilliant Donald Trump is, day one of his hush money trial, the Stormy Daniels trial, the Michael Avenatti trial, he took in $1 million in campaign contributions. This may be the future. I mean, the next 100 years could see, if you want to get elected to something, you better get arrested first. The more times you appear in courtrooms. And there's a reality. A lot of my friends are saying, isn't this a new paradigm, Joe? No, it's not. It's just a new way to reach an old paradigm in media consumption. So it used to fall under the heading of the power of the incumbency. That unseating an incumbent was more daunting because you had to spend more money to get on television or radio or in the newspapers, because the incumbent inherently was going to get more media coverage for them actually just being the incumbent. They're the office holder, they're the attorney general, they're the governor, they're the congressman, they're the former president of the United States, they're the current president of the United States. So the issue is, how do you get on television if you're the challenger? Well, here's a new way to do this. Get hauled into court. Now, you don't have to pay for the times that the newsrooms mention you, and the mathematics used to go like this, that for every time a newsmaker appeared on a program, on a newscast, not necessarily a chat room show like we're doing, but if they appeared in a bona fide newscast, 6 p.m., NBC 29, Rappaport says, and now we hear from the congressman. And that had the impact of, I think depending on the market size, it was between 5 and 10 paid TV commercials that you would have to run to equal the impact in a voter's mind of, oh, I saw the congressman on TV and he said that they were going to do X, Y, and Z for me. Well, his opponent has to run 10 TV commercials to get out the word that Congressman Who's-He What's-It is lying to you or isn't going to do X, Y, and Z for you. So that was always the thing. So Trump has figured out, again, pick the day of the week, either he's an idiot or he's the most brilliant political mind in the history of political minds, is now on the news rent-free, like he's living in the news directors' heads rent-free, at a breakneck pace. He was on the news more yesterday than President Biden was. President Biden was out there in a policy stump speech in Pennsylvania, his old hometown. I'm just Scranton, Pennsylvania Joe. And Donald Trump gobbled up more newscast time for day 2 of his trial. But he collected $1 million in campaign contributions on day 1 of his trial. Because a lot of people, especially in the black communities, can emphasize with some of what President Trump is going through. And people don't like hearing that. But there's an awful lot of folks in the black community that feel like their cousin or their brother or they themselves have been arrested or detained or dragged into court for spurious reasons. So you can call us 434 882-4217. You, of course, leave a message there, or you can email us at jtinthemorningradio@gmail.com, and we'll read your emails to that. Also want to get into the story we kind of got into a little bit yesterday. Terry McAuliffe is on the phone to Senator Kaine saying, hey, I tried this before. It didn't work out so well. Now, I don't know if Senator Kaine, I believe what Senator Kaine said the other day on the campaign trail is worse than what Terry McAuliffe said, and we'll let you decide on that. More shootings in Charlottesville, but don't worry, your taxes are going up. So while the bullets are flying, so are the tax bills. They just voted for in excess of $250 million spending plan. And the city of Staunton started building a courtroom. Didn't they get the memo? Didn't they get the memo that if you have courtrooms and jails, you have crime? That if you don't have courtrooms and you don't have jails, well, then you don't have crime. Because reasons. So this email came into jtinthemorningradio@gmail.com from Gary, watching in Berlin, New Hampshire. Oops is the title. Joe, NASA has reported that a cargo pallet containing nickel hydride batteries was released from the International Space Station. Unfortunately, a small piece did not burn up and crashed into a Florida home. Let's see what potential charges that you or I would face with such an act. So, of course, Gary, you're presuming that I have a space station. I mean, it's tough enough to get a corner of my basement set aside for what we do. But okay, all right, so we'll go with the premise that I have a space station and I drop something out of the back door there. So the potential charges, Gary details: 1, attempted negligent homicide, assault with a deadly weapon, a hate crime because the current administration is Democratic and Florida is a red state, vandalism, and littering. See, Gary, I think you've buried the lead. I think the bigger problem is the eco-crime of the nickel hydride battery that has now plummeted into the fragile ecosystem, and especially if they were anywhere near, I don't know, the Everglades or something like that. What if this battery, instead of hitting a human's home, had hit, some endangered waterfowl? Or the manatee. What if this battery had struck a manatee in the head? Now we're serious. Of course, whales are safe because we're already killing most of the whales with the Ralph Northam Memorial Wind Farm out in the Atlantic Ocean. Gary, good stuff there too. jtinthemorningradio at gmail.com. You can send your comments there. We'll read them, or you call in. And again, it's a voicemail, so you set up, you read the voicemail there, and they will, and then you leave the comment or question that you have for me, and we'll play it back shortly thereafter. I mentioned Charlottesville and the shooting and the budget. So here is the budget situation as it plays out now. We have Steve Rappaport's piece there, so I want to get this into the public record. So $262 million budget is what they're proposing in the city of Charlottesville. So do we have the, no, I don't think we have it there yet. Can you get the, that's the one. We want to get the, that's the one. Yay! There it is, boys and girls. So this is Steve Rappaport and NBC 29 on the budget and all the taxes that are going to be going up.
The budget passed unanimously, voted 4-0, with Mayor Juan Diego Wade not present.
Well, it's always good to get through the budget process, being able to conclude, make sure that council has gotten the answers that they seek.
The approved budget comes out to more than $253 million. Roughly $24 million than a year ago.
That we're prioritizing is making sure that we were able to support our schools at a higher level. That was one of the big requests that we did receive, as well as just making sure that our organization is able to attract and retain some of the best people to serve this community.
Sam Sanders is the city manager. He says one big difference in this budget: collective bargaining.
We're integrating that with three unions: police, fire, and transit. So those come at a cost, and then just trying to modernize our pay system overall.
The hot topic for many, the tax hikes. With the real estate tax, personal property tax, lodging tax, and meals tax all increasing.
We do know that there are some who have issues with the tax increases, fully understand that people can't necessarily see how they can absorb additional increases, and our goal is to make sure that our relief programs are available.
The biggest surprise was the increase in personal property taxes, which had not changed in years.
I mean, we know that it's always tough when there's a tax increase that's involved in preparation of a budget. My priority has always been that it's only necessary for the things that council has prioritized.
So the city manager there, of course, talking about what Ben Franklin said: if you want less of something, tax it. And when they raised the personal property tax as much as they did, the implication is you shouldn't be owning personal property. But you hear the almost predictable. So what did the city manager just say in that piece? Well, we have aid programs for the people who can't pay those extra taxes. And this becomes the self-consuming ice cream cone. You raise taxes so that you have a budget that funds priorities of people, and helps people in need, as the left will tell you they're supposed to be doing. And then you create an aid program that then, of course, needs a budget to pay for the people's taxes that can't afford to pay the taxes, admitting that all of these taxes are regressive.
This is the Racing Wire Minute with Brian Belansky.
The Long Beach Concrete Jungle. That's our next.
The Racing Wire Minute is presented by
She can stand, she can do more. Like build a rocket and watch it soar. Clean the oceans and make the world a better place. Oh, she can stand.
Learn more at She Can STEM.
If the Indy 500 is the crown jewel on the IndyCar schedule, Long Beach is the diamond in the rough. It started as a Formula 5000 race in 1975, then 8 F1 races. Since 1984, it's been an IndyCar race, and it's arguably the second most important race on the schedule. Last year, Kyle Kirkwood won his first career IndyCar race on the streets of Long Beach. Kirkwood will try to repeat, but Joseph Newgarden is always strong at Long Beach, and Long Beach is local hero Colton Herta's home race. IMSA, Vintage IndyCars, and Stadium Super Trucks are also on the schedule.
Your Wednesday forecast calls for mostly cloudy skies, a chance of showers or an isolated storm late in the day, afternoon highs in the mid-70s. Wednesday night, chance of showers and storms after midnight, mostly cloudy, a low of 61. Thursday, sunny, afternoon highs around 82. We're partly cloudy and 54 on Thursday night. By Friday, a chance of showers in the afternoon, mostly cloudy, a bit cooler, a high of 73. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now, back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Thomas in the morning, and thank you for joining us on Rumble and YouTube. What an amazing number of people. Like 200 people watched the video yesterday on YouTube and Rumble combined. It was like approaching 250. It was like one viewer for every $1 million the city of Charlottesville was spending anyway. So a story that we started to get into yesterday, I don't think we spent enough time on because it's whether or not it changes how you vote in the U.S. Senate race is, well, it's relevant to me because this is sadly what these people believe. And again, eventually the hubris wins over and a little truthiness comes out from them. Do we have the story from yesterday, which is Tim Kaine on the campaign trail admitted to it. He said he compared parents who raise hell at school board meetings to January 6th rioters. And he said that when he watches these videos of parents yelling at school board meetings, that he's taken back to those moments when he was barricaded inside of his office, hiding, cowering from the January 6th insurrectionists. Number one, I mean, it again reminds you what their view of people who, albeit perhaps more aggressively than I would have done it, were inside of a building without the permission of the denizens. That is really what is most of the charges against the January 6th insurrectionists, is when they finally see the inside of the courtroom, it's mostly trespassing that they're in trouble with because nobody had given them permission to be in the Capitol building of the government that, according to the governing documents, they run. That's the whole thing. So under the banner of "Oops, I did it again," let's go back. It's classic news this morning on Joe Thomas in the Morning. That great moment in 2019. 2021, when Governor McAuliffe was trying to get his job back, and this outsider came in, and they had one big debate.
What we've seen over the course of the last 20 months is our school systems refusing to engage with parents. In fact, in Fairfax County this past week, we watched parents so upset because there was such sexually explicit material in the library they had never seen. It was shocking. And in fact, you vetoed the bill that would have informed parents that they were there. You believe school systems should tell children what to do. I believe parents should be in charge of their kids' education.
Mr. McAuliffe, 30 seconds.
So first of all, this shows how clueless Glenn Youngkin is. He doesn't understand what the laws were because he's never been involved here in helping Virginia. But
by the way, he doesn't say governing Virginia. He says helping Virginia, which is, again, a little truthiness in how the left views their role on the big bag of other people's money.
It's not. The parents had the right to veto bills, veto books, Glenn, not to be knowledgeable about it, also take them off the shelves. And I'm not going to let parents come into schools and actually take books out and make their own decision.
You vetoed it.
So, yeah, I stopped the bill that I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
So there was the historical moment, that moment when Governor McAuliffe's political career came crashing down. And one wonders, we've reached out to Kim Fletcher from Moms for America if there is a mobilization that's going to go on. Because if you listen to what, and that did him in, he was 10 points ahead of Glenn Youngkin in all the gubernatorial polls. But Governor Youngkin, on the basis of that statement alone, gained, in some counties, 10% over the last Republican gubernatorial candidate. Loudoun County, Fairfax County, all part of the blue Northern Virginia, 10% increases in votes for a Republican in a statewide race. So one wonders if Tim Kaine is going to face the same backlash, because I think his comparison to the January 6th riots at the Capitol is even more tone deaf than Terry McAuliffe's, because he's again signaling that you could be considered an insurrectionist if you argue with your school board. Now, we know this to be true because the FBI has opened dossiers on parents who have spoken out at school board meetings and things like that. But in the deeper sense, this is a look inside, like from our field guide to the great American left. This is what they actually believe about you. And what I don't understand, and maybe you can help me at 434-882-4217. You call me, you leave your comment on voicemail. But what I don't understand is why people allow themselves to be gaslit in this way. This is the classic abusive spouse attitude. Why do you make me do these things to you? This is the spouse saying to their abused partner, "Why, if you just had what I wanted, I wouldn't have to do this stuff to you. I wouldn't cheat on you if you were a better spouse. I wouldn't abuse you. I wouldn't ignore you. I wouldn't spend all your money that you work for if you just had dinner on the table when I came home." Yes, it's exactly the same as an abusive spousal relationship. And as a friend of people who have been in those relationships, I sit there and say, just come over, we have a guest bedroom. And I don't care who's political. I wish we had better choices in political parties, because I think if we had better choices, more varied choices, I think we wouldn't have this problem. Because the Democratic Party feels like they have a birthright to at least 50% of the voter turnout. And they work in the margins of that 1% that'll push them over the edge. And of course, we see the voter turnout even in Barack Obama's historic election, even in Glenn Youngkin's election. I think it was 55% voter turnout across Virginia in the election that Glenn Youngkin won. Even the year before in the presidential election, I think it was only 63% voter turnout in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So one will scratch their head and say, oh, could the answer have been, what was the other 40% not hearing? Did the other 40% feel like, I better keep my powder dry because I don't want Tim Kaine to send the FBI because I'm just like the January 6th rioters. I don't want to be labeled an insurrectionist. We watched as business owners had their operating licenses removed because they were in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. Never mind even being a participant in the riots or even the rally for President Trump. So these are the things that they've used. These are these narratives now, the narratives that have become chargeable offenses in our body politic in an effort to just get to that 50.5%. 50% of 25% is 12%. And generally that's what we find governing our states and our counties and our cities when they raise our taxes on everything, because they're really only looking to get to that 51%. Tommy writes in, the arrogance is not lost in this. We fund the schools, pay the politicians, and they spew this sort of nonsense that parents shouldn't have a voice in what's being taught. Well, and it's not even about the voice anymore. See, Tom, this is brilliance, because you no longer have to engage in the debate. You don't have to win the argument. You have to dismiss the argument whole hog. That's the point of his January 6th comparison. Is Tim Kaine doesn't want to have a debate about what's going on in schools, why Johnny can't read, why Johnny doesn't even think it's important to read anymore, why Johnny's city has to set aside millions of dollars in remedial reading programs for recent high school graduates. That phrase is directly from a Charlottesville city school budget, as they set aside millions of dollars from the taxpayers to pay to educate recent high school graduates. So these are people who just were told, congratulations, you've got a Charlottesville high school diploma. Can't read it, but we'll set aside some extra money to pay some more people to try to teach you something we haven't been able to do in the previous 12 years. Don't know what they think they're going to do different, but there's money to be spent on it, because somebody behind a lectern is going to say, I will fix this so it never happens again. You're right, Tom. I mean, the arrogance of the American authoritarian left, and I think it's partially driven because they just don't feel like there's anyone who's going to take their lunch money from them, that they're guaranteed 50% of the voter turnout, and all they have to do is work in that 1 or 2% margin to get over the finish line. They enter the game with a lead in the 9th inning, partially because the news is covering them for what they want, and they get on the news more than almost anyone except Donald J. Trump. And so we talked to Jonathan E. Mord and Eddie Garcia about this yesterday. You can watch that later on. You can go back and watch the show on the YouTube or Rumble channels. We'll also talk about it with Chuck Smith and see, are you going to make an issue of this? Because the Youngkin campaign just went right at it. It's just like, Rocky Balboa going after Apollo Creed's rib. Just body blow. And McAuliffe didn't know what to do, because he couldn't turn and change his position, because the leash of the teachers' unions was very, very strong. Randy Weingarten said, Terry, oh dear Terry, probably not going to win this one. But it's okay. When you run for Senate or you become the Democratic Party chair again, we'll be there to back you up. And that's why it doesn't change, because they knew they'd come back and they'd win the House, and they won the Senate, and now they've got Glenn Youngkin on a leash anyway.
Your Wednesday forecast calls for mostly cloudy skies, a chance of showers or an isolated storm late in the day. Afternoon highs in the mid-70s. Wednesday night, chance of showers and storms after midnight, mostly cloudy, a low of 61. Thursday, sunny. Afternoon highs around 82. We're partly cloudy and 54 on Thursday night. By Friday, a chance of showers in the afternoon, mostly cloudy, a bit cooler, a high of 73. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now, back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Joe Thomas in the morning, and on with us from the secret home office of Talkers Magazine, where mysteriously he seems to know everything, and I mean everything that goes on in the talk media, the spoken word industry. He is Michael Harrison, publisher of Talkers. Michael, it's good to see you, and of course, frontman for the band Gun Hill Road. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great at the secret home or the secret office. I'm not sure which it is, but it's always good to have a certain amount of mystery about you. I
Yeah.
like your set. You look pretty. It looks good.
Yeah, we gussied it up. We're on Rumble now, so they have standards, I guess. And
Yeah.
short of hiring a blonde co-host to sit with me, I figured this is as good as it's getting.
It's a pretty wild new world we're living in, isn't it?
Distribution is interesting. So, of course, you and I are from the electrons shooting through the air, the color teenies, as Tom Snyder used to call them, shooting through the air to receivers wherever the listeners may be. But now there are so many ways with technology to converse with people. You were one of the avant-garde in the world of podcasts, Michael, and I know that you and Norm Patitz and the folks at Pod Jockey and folks like that. Look back 10 years and talk about where we are now. Is it way more than you thought? Has it underperformed?
Oh no, it hasn't even arrived yet where I thought. We're still in the early days of a tremendous revolution. I've been telling the industry about all this stuff since the 90s. We're talking, what is it now, 2024? We're a quarter of the way through the 21st century. Remember when to the year 2000, the future? There used to be a show on the
Y2K.
science. Yeah, there was Y2K. There was a show on the Science Channel I used to watch all the time called Beyond 2000. When I was a kid, we used to try to calculate how old will you be in the year 2000. 2000 was the mark-off point,
Right.
and that was the future. And then nothing would ever change. Remember the movie 2001?
Space Odyssey.
Right. So, but since 2000, the years keep piling up. And all of a sudden now we're a quarter of the way through the 21st century. What I'm saying is people who've been around a while and people who, spent most of their life in the 20th century are in a brave new world. but we haven't seen anything yet. We're still in the Model T era of the new technology, and with it, the new sociology.
Well, and has this really been, and I remember some of the Talkers magazine, and I used to, one of the things I loved about going to Talkers was hearing people talking about all the new ways to do radio. And whether it be cover news, or I think last year, some of the panel I got to sit on was about using technology, and a lot of it was about promoting the radio shows and radio stations. But I spent a little time talking about all those neat things I learned back at Talkers about ways to get the radio shows into radio stations now. That's been a fascinating development with a lot of the streaming services, of even available on your phone. You can have a news reporter. I remember 1986, I was working my first radio station, and the news director carried a Marantz around, those big clunky recorders. She just kept it in her back seat in case she had been taught that in case you see the flashing lights, pull over, say, I'm with so and so news, and you're ready to get an actuality. Now we have them in our breast pockets, don't we, Mike?
Yeah, I was a Marantz carrier myself.
Hmm.
I've produced major network radio specials on a Marantz. And where I use the Marantz not only to gather the material, but I use the Marantz to do a lot of the editing. You could do amazing things with a cassette machine back in the days if you understood the theory. I was broadcasting live from places with alligator clips and Marantzes, using the
Oh
cassette
yeah.
machine as a mixing board and going, we're talking in the 80s.
And
Uh,
kids, there used to be these fanciful dinosaur like contraptions. I think right after Stegosaurus, they were called payphones. And
oh,
and you mentioned the alligator clips, and you unscrewed the mouthpiece, and if you
mhm.
clipped onto the wires, you had an instant feed back to the studio.
I dazzled people with it. I once sold a package for a local parade on the radio, covering a parade on the radio, and I found a payphone, and I a lot of money in it, and
Hmm.
then we had that thing called the vroom, and then you put your little credit card in, and you could
Hmm.
talk. Remember that?
Oh
And
yeah.
and I was broadcasting from a parade, by the alligator clips through the Marantz. It's all basically the same theory, but to answer the kind of broad questions we're throwing at each other
Hmm.
right now, the challenge is not how to get radio to a lot of people through the distribution, or how to get shows to the radio station through the communications distribution and vehicles we have. It's how, because of that old saying, the medium is the message, how do we maintain radio being radio?
Hmm.
How do we know what radio is? How does radio maintain its radio-ness when so much of the influence on the art of any platform is the technology itself? Can you do a radio show on a podcast, or does it become a podcast? You have to do something else. It's like, when does a motion picture become a television show?
See,
When it's
see, my
shown on.
son produces podcasts for people. He works in television. Kids. But we were having a conversation about why podcasts and radio kind of work together and work in the same milieu. And it struck me that one of the very, very, very first things I was taught in radio, Michael, is that the only thing that you could nearly guarantee about a radio listener was that they were sitting by themselves, and that if you acted as if there was some grand group of people out there, you were going to disenfranchise most people who were sitting in their car, sitting in their kitchen, sitting in their office cubicle, listening by themselves. And that was a very powerful thing. And I think the one-to-oneness of what I see a lot of the successful podcasters do is very indicative of what we were taught to do when we were getting into radio, back when we were doing it with stone knives and bearskins.
When you were getting into radio, maybe. When I was getting into radio, uh, it was the opposite. It was, you were larger than life. You were from the Tower of Power on top of the mountain. This is the big town sound, broadcasting from high above New York City. This is WORFM. Uh, there's been an evolution in terms of the one-to-many and the one-to-oneness of radio over the years.
Mm.
And I think it's the creation of the ear pod, the people listening with these private little things that are hidden in their ears, that has changed the nature of it. There was a time when radio was in big radios and you'd take them to the beach and you'd hear the same station all over the beach, or you'd walk down the street in an urban area where there are apartment buildings and brownstones, and you'd hear the ball game coming out of everybody.
Yeah.
So there was a one-to-many aspect of radio along the way as well. That's just one of the psychological and theoretical aspects, media theory, that is impacted by the evolution of how people use the medium.
Mhm.
So I don't mean to be argumentative, but
No, no, no. That was very well thought out because there is a communal nature to radio. We actually have station IDs when I get a station back, that claim we're the original social media because you would call the radio station to get a request on or to say something to the girl. Classically, the underlying story in American Graffiti is him trying to get a message to Suzanne Summers, and who wasn't at the time, and finally goes and finds some guy with melting popsicles in the middle of the desert, and gets a song played for her. But now it's talk radio as well, the spoken word, and being able to call in and vent either your frustration, your excitement, whatever it may be, in myriad of things, and not just politics. I mean, I listen to Dave Ramsey, and he's getting people bearing their souls about things on his radio program, and you say, gosh, we are still, I think, from that one many, we feel that
you want to
community.
feel that you're a member of something, even if the personality is talking directly to you.
Mhm.
Especially at talk radio, especially political talk radio and sports talk radio, you want to feel that you're part of a community. You're not the only fan
Right.
of whatever the team is. That you're part of, Giants Nation, and you love like that tune. The nation. It's not just enough to be a local team. You got to be a nation team,
Mhm.
or a political movement.
Right.
So my summation on that subject is it constantly is capsizing. It's constantly the form and the content. Sometimes the form becomes the content. Sometimes the content, a cup of coffee. Is it a cup or is it coffee? I'll have a cup. Well, here's a cup. I wanted coffee. Well, here's coffee. Splish. The relationship between the cup and the coffee is what we're talking about.
Mhm.
I'm really into this stuff because
Oh,
it
no,
really,
this is like a sociology course right here.
well,
Which
is it?
came first, the coffee or the cup?
Exactly. And so what's a radio show? What is a
Mhm.
podcast?
Mhm.
What's a movie?
Right.
Do you remember when you were a kid, you would buy in the store a little 8 millimeter reel of Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein and you'd put it on your whatever
Sure.
they call the projector with the loop and all that, and
Mhm.
wow, I own a piece of a real movie. This is
Yep.
like a real professional movie. I could play it at my house.
I can
Um,
invite people over, and I've
right.
become the cool kid all of a sudden. So let me bring this, full circle, because Michael, if you run into me, I do a creditable Michael Harrison impression, or at least I've learned to
Oh
in
my.
our new endeavor. When I talk to people in the radio industry, and they say, "You're buying a radio station," and I say, "Well, one of the first people I talked to about this was the great Michael Harrison at Talkers," and I tell people Michael's seminal question to me was, why? And I hope I do you credit with why.
Yeah,
And and
I could see myself saying that.
but it's a good question. It's a question we should always ask ourselves before we crack open a microphone or turn on the cameras or knock over the cameras, as I did right before we came on the air. And why? Why are you doing this? And it strikes me that every year at Talkers, there seem to be more and more people in this ecosystem of little, small, individual privately held, not leveraged, not part of a big corporate chain radio owners. Todd Starnes, of course, famous from, he was Brian Kilmeade before Brian Kilmeade got to be Brian Kilmeade at Fox News, or even all the way up to New York City has an independently owned radio station at
Yes.
WOBC.
Yes.
And so I think, and maybe it's just the very earliest, that first DNA strand has appeared in the primordial ooze, but I think there's a growing movement, if you will, Michael. Am I overstating it? Maybe because now I'm part of it and I want it to be a movement, but of
All
people who
movements,
are.
all movements start with somebody wanting it to be a movement. Let's just say it has the potential to be a successful movement. It all depends again on why. What is it that you would like to do? Do you want to revive radio the way it was back 30 years ago? Or do you want to create radio as a viable and respectable and exciting element within what will inevitably be a changed media scene?
Okay.
You know, and these are the questions. You don't think I ask myself that? People say, why don't you have Talkers be a podcast publication? Or why don't you,
Substack or any of the
give
distribution
television equal billing? I got, well, we're radio, but we understand that radio connects to all these other media.
Mm-hmm.
But what is the centricity of your platform? Ours is radio. Radio as it relates to AM and FM, radio as it relates to podcasting, radio as it relates to video, and radio as it relates to all different kinds of social media. Not just radio in a vacuum, but don't water down the magic and the specialness of radio to be all things. Because once you put a television camera in that studio, you're not radio anymore, you're a form of video. You could take the world's greatest radio show and turn it into cheesy television.
Oh, sure. Look behind me. I mean, you don't think this is a display titled "Compensating for Something"? I mean, goodness, Joe, how many awards did you win? But that I guess is the truth of trying to reach people where they are, which has always been radio's thing, isn't it, Michael?
I think so. Radio is pure consciousness. Radio, that's why they say theater of the mind. Radio is best when it has an element of mystery about it. Back to what we said earlier, am I in my secret, lair? How do you want to present yourself? The first thing I said to you was, hey, nice jacket, nice shirt, nice color scheme.
The pajama pants below the camera line, they're very comfortable too.
Right. But if I were dealing with, the pure essence of Joe, it's a very different thing to hear the voice than to see the person.
But I think that comes through, whether it be a radio speaker or even the podcast. And this goes back to the podcast because most of those are video, centric. But there is that one-to-oneness that you feel that I think that has to start with a certain amount of authenticity of the presenter. Don't you, Michael? I mean, there's only so much you can pretend to be behind a microphone.
There's no doubt eventually you'll be exposed. And currently there's this big thing on YouTube where almost every video is made by AI, and the voices are AI. And then you hear one word will give it away. One word where the AI consciousness says
syntax.
And Joe Thomas, it just doesn't get it.
Right.
AI is like that DJ or talk show host who just moved into a new area and doesn't know certain towns are not pronounced the way they're spelled.
Yes. Oh yeah.
And it gives it away. So back to authenticity. Authenticity is a multidimensional concept. And authenticity, especially as we enter the age of scamming, as we enter the age of AI, artificial intelligence, artificial everything. And again, back to that word scam. Authenticity is your major stock in trade, not just in the radio, not even in the media, in life, in business. That's part of the new era that we're heading into is that, what's real and who can you trust?
Well, and that's you mentioned we mentioned the band Gun Hill Road, which is a band. Now, how far back does the band date with you, Michael? Is it the 80s, the
Seven,
70s?
I hooked up with Gun Hill Road in 1971.
Okay.
I was, do you remember Murray the K on WINS? Murray the K on the Swingin' Soiree. I'm the fifth Beatle, John, Paul, George, and Ringo, and my buddies, and all
Right,
that.
right.
Well, I was the fifth Gun Hill Road. And
Well,
I used to,
you all have those moments, don't you? I mean, that was when the radio guy was the one who knew all the cool songs before they came out.
the DJ was the guru that kept the kids connected to the culture.
Yep.
That's and the kids ran what most radio stations called prime time at night.
Hmm.
The night guy was the cool guy. The guy during the day wasn't as cool as the guy at night.
Oh, yeah.
And but that's turned around in many ways. But Gun Hill Road was a band that they were an album rock band. I was a album rock DJ circa 1970, 71, 72, 73 in New York City at WNAW-FM,
Hmm.
which was a very hip station. And they were a New York-based band. I don't want to call them a local band because they had an album on Mercury Records, and then they had their second album on Kama Sutra Records. And they had a hit song called Back When My Hair Was Short around 1973. And then they
Yeah, I
faded
remember.
out, and they went their own ways. And I remained friendly with them, but they reunited about 15 years ago and put out an album called Every 40 Years. And this time I was sort of a member of the band, and we started writing songs, and I became, it's a four-man band. Their original members are in it, and new members, and but I go back to the beginning with them, and I have found this to be a very, very exciting form of expression for me, and I'm having a ball.
And I may misstate the name of the new song. It's called "Get Off My Phone," which and if it's not actually called that, that's what I call it. But
It's close.
it's
You're close. It's called "Damn Scammers, Get Off My Phone." Get
right.
off my phone is in
It's the
parentheses.
subtitle, but I mean,
Yeah.
I have enough friends at my age who are Mr. or Mrs. Get Off My Lawn, so Get Off My
Yeah.
Phone
Well, do you remember
is
Bob Grant, the
oh
conservative?
yeah.
Well, his catchphrase was "Get off my phone," click. And so that was sort of like an homage to him.
Oh
But
sure.
YouTube shadow banned us because of sensational content and calling people to violence, because we actually do tell people that that the scammers should die, die. And we show them burning them at the
Oh, all right.
stake.
Well, that's a good tip because I was about to play the song, and
Oh,
we're
you
on
can play
YouTube
it.
and
It's nothing.
Rundle.
We're a band that
I'm
gets.
already on. I'm on my third strike at YouTube, so it's that or yell ivermectin in a crowded emergency room,
Yeah, well,
and I might.
don't put yourself out. If anybody wants to see the video that got us in trouble with YouTube, it's still on YouTube. The
Okay.
algorithms are such that you can't find it unless you know the secret way in. And the secret way in is damn no. Start again. Take two. Um, scammersvideo.com.
Okay, scammersvideo.com. Michael, I look forward to seeing you and breaking a bagel up at Talkers, the annual conference where everyone in the spoken word industry comes together for a confab to talk about these things and learn some new stuff, new technology that's out there, whether it's, how to, get a camera to stay on its tripod or how to, work a studio when you don't have any studio gear. But Michael, it's always an honor to talk with you about the future of radio, the one legacy media that I've always reminded people hasn't nearly hemorrhaged the users that all the other ones have. And I'm not saying it's a race. I know people watch television. I know people read news print somewhere because we use it differently. But radio really hasn't seen the degradation of their audience. I mean, it's gone down some, but it really is. It's like the cockroach of legacy media.
It's
We
the
just can't kill.
cockroach of media.
That's right. That's right. There's the new banner headline.
I called it the sterno of media. When people said, "What about when the electricity goes out? Your lead read?" I go, "What are we, the sterno of media?"
That's right.
But this is better. We're the cockroach of media.
That's
I
right.
love it.
That's right.
Hey, listen,
Hey,
Joe, I want you to have the best of luck and with this new venture. all seriously, in all seriousness, what you're doing is very valid, and what you put into it is what you'll get out of it.
Well, thank you so much. Your counsel has always been because it's always good for somebody with a full head of steam to be stopped and asked, why? So, thank you, sir. God bless. Safe travels, and we'll see you in less than a couple of weeks.
Yeah, you got it.
Joe Thomas in the morning. Thank you for joining in and being part of it. YouTube and Rumble, and at some point we're going to have, as it says in the Chiron there, coming soon to WTON Radio, 1240 AM, 101.1 FM, and 98.9 FM, depending on where you are. And who knows, there may be some place in Charlottesville you'll be able to hear me. Wink, wink. Working on it. I mean, these are all... People say, well, are you enjoying any of the time off, Joe? What time off? I have to make it. What's the expression? You got to fake it till you make it. So a couple of folks calling in. 434-882-4217 is how you get to us, and you can post a comment, post a question in there. I generally, like I usually do when we do live phone calls, I don't screen, I don't pre-listen or anything like that. So you're going to get my unexpunged reaction anyway. Let's see what we've got on the call-in line here.
Hey, Joe. Let's start with the Tim Kaine comparison of the January 6 people to parents at school board meetings. To the would-be totalitarian that wants total and absolute power, they're the exact same. They threaten the acquisition of that power, and therefore they must be crushed. So full force FBI, DOJ, and they have to be crushed. Now, on the local tax thing you were talking about, there's a certain amount of irony there. The federal government printed lots more money, and greenflation, that's right, through the energy policy, has created tremendous inflation. Conservatively, 25% since this administration took office. So, every dollar you have is worth 25% less.
Minimum.
But at the same time, the local government's dollar is worth 25% less. And they can't go print more money, so they have to tax more. Now, the federal government can print more when it can't tax enough. The local government has to tax more when the federal government has made the tax dollars they do have worth less. And those poor fools that get up and go to work every morning are footing the bill at both ends. Well, I look forward to being able to talk to you in person again. Take care, Joe.
So you speak to the truism, and this goes back to why when you cut taxes, mysteriously, collections at a government level go up. Because we engage in activity. We go and buy things from each other, which means we have to hire people. And we go back and forth in this, how do you hire someone if you're not selling anything? And if you're not selling anything, then you're not going to hire anyone, or you may even let those people go. And then you have people who don't have the money to go buy things, and it becomes that self-consuming ice cream cone of poverty that we watched happen in the 70s, and we watched happen in the 90s, and we watched happen in the late aughts as well. 07, 08, people lost their jobs, and then people were underwater in their homes, which redoubled the problem because we had injected the home ownership market with human growth hormones, and it went crazy, and people were taking out home improvement loans to go on vacations. There were ads saying, oh, buy this timeshare with your home improvement loan. And the lines of credit that people were getting for not what they were actually using it for was just stunning. And like you said, it created inflation, which then ruined the amount of money that we had, and the local government then said, well, we need more of that too.
Your Wednesday forecast calls for mostly cloudy skies, a chance of showers or an isolated storm late in the day, afternoon highs in the mid-70s. Wednesday night, chance of showers and storms after midnight, mostly cloudy, a low of 61. Thursday, sunny, afternoon highs around 82. We're partly cloudy and 54 on Thursday night. By Friday, a chance of showers in the afternoon, mostly cloudy, a bit cooler, a high of 73. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now, back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
In the morning here on YouTube and Rumble. Thank you for joining in, being part of the broadcast, narrowcast, if you will. We have pretty good viewer numbers first couple of days on Rumble, so we appreciate that. And apparently I didn't bollocks the programming of the Rumble channel, because everything seemed to be going out to you the way it should have been. So I appreciate all that. A couple of things, and finish up on Clark's call that we just played, and you can call as well at 434-882-4217. He was talking about the connection. Terry McAuliffe's statements on parents speaking up at school board meetings are similar to the January 6th rioters, but the authoritarians need you to stop questioning. See, there's a story in I want to pull it up, because yesterday we told you the story of the NAACP was going after the Youngkin administration because they were avoiding FOIA and the scrutiny of the regular citizens. Well, here's a story. Watchdog group sues Biden administration for documents related to the menthol cigarette crackdown that they were undergoing. Menthol cigarettes, of course, this is akin to what we told you about earlier in the program in Great Britain, because they're paying for your health care. They are now working. I love the way the phrase that pays is they're working phasing out cigarette smoking. What they're phasing in is a cigarette smoking ban. And so the British government, because they're paying for your health care, can do that. The Biden administration said, we're going to ban menthol cigarettes. And people said, what? And so now a watchdog group is trying to get information from the Biden administration to explain to them, why did you pick menthol cigarettes? I mean, there's if you go back and you find any of the old ads for menthol cigarettes, there's a certain, how do you say this? Oh, you just say it. Ethnicity to the advertising, and that was driven by the fact that there was a certain ethnicity that the demographers found in those who enjoyed menthol cigarettes. So why would the Biden, and this watchdog group wants the documents that they used to come up with this menthol cigarette ban. Why just menthol cigarettes? What's the matter with the other ones? Can we have other flavors? Can we do something other than just ban menthol cigarettes? So the Biden administration is apparently avoiding FOIA scrutiny for that as well. More comments. This one, this is just on the radio station purchase. Congratulations on the purchase of a station. The launch of your new adventure. We'll be following you here in Buckingham County. Well, and we'll be back, and hopefully this actually opens more doors than that. It's interesting what people just presume, oh, you're the Charlottesville guy. And Charlottesville still always will remain the second most important town in the history of humanity, based on the work product of just a couple of their native sons. Now, granted, they're never going to unseat Galilee. There's that carpenter from Galilee. And to be fair, the work product of the couple of guys from Charlottesville, Madison and Jefferson, really kind of based on the work of the carpenter from Galilee anyway. So Charlottesville is always going to hold that place. And I think it's important that the freedom-loving person keeps Charlottesville, because if you lose Charlottesville, it's really a beachhead that I don't know if you get back. And the academics, and I guess the daunting thing is, you and I face this a lot. You've told me when you and I have hung out together, how frustrated you get. Oh, I'm tired. Joe, I'm just tired. I just want to undo my tie. I want to sit down. I just want to have a glass of wine. I just come out to the coast, have a few laughs. And I'm reminded of what von Steuben said to George Washington at Valley Forge. So George Washington, they're encamped for the winter at Valley Forge. It's freezing. There's no food. There's no money. There's really not to do but practice and march and drill, just in an effort to stay warm in some cases. And von Steuben, one of the Hessian generals, had joined in with Washington. And the story goes that von Steuben sat down with General Washington and he said, "You're going about this all wrong." I mean, I would try to do a von Steuben accent, but I would just come out sounding like Mel Brooks. "You're doing this all wrong." Well, actually, I sound more like Bernie Kopell, Siegfried. "You're doing this all wrong. This is not time to panic. It will be time when I tell you it is time to panic." But so von Steuben says to Washington, you don't understand, this is your home. They're the occupying force. All you have to do is not lose. You don't have to go to them and win. They will quit eventually. And this is actually a stratagem that Ho Chi Minh used in Southeast Asia, that ISIS used in Afghanistan. Who's the occupying force? So in the world of progressive versus conservative, or in truly my viewpoint, it's restorative. I look at some of the things, the corruption that goes on amongst the money changers in Washington and Richmond and all those places, and I say, I don't want to conserve that. I want to restore some sense of order. I want to go back to the world that actually got to create the prosperity that we had post-World War II. And even that, we had already started the New Deal and all these things that we had created a precedent that the federal government should do or could do, and then each successive generation of federal and statewide representatives just kept, well, you let us do it back in 33, so you should be let us do it now. And that precedential governance has just led us to this point where, as Dr. Clark said, government prints and prints and prints money, devaluing the money that's out there, never minding what they do personally to devalue the, quote, full faith and credit of the American government. And on the subject of the printing of the money, certainly it went to 11 under COVID-19 because they told us all to stay home. Now I have and if you were listening to the radio back in 2019, we had a different view on constitutionally how you could do a shutdown, because the Fifth Amendment guarantees that your property can't be taken from you without due process and just compensation. So you create a just compensation for somebody's work. You say, listen, 2 weeks to flatten the curve, that's all we need. And the government would have been trapped in a cycle where you couldn't possibly keep up with it. And yet they did. They continued to print money and send it to people. Continued to print money and send it to businesses because really they had no authority to tell you, the citizen, to stay home. But if they convinced your business, the place you work, to close by sending them payroll protection plan money, monies that got corrupted and used in all sorts of spurious places, that just almost completed the reset cycle where the currency has to, because there's so much indebtedness, you almost couldn't conceive of a way to pay it back. And you can. I'm not saying you can't. But then on top of it, we get into this greedflation that Dr. Clark mentioned in his call, greenflation. The breakneck use
the problem
of this, and I got a clip from the old radio show. This is from 2019, and I think this is the beginning. This clip is indicative of what I saw at the time. This is 2019, maybe early 2020. I think it's early 2020 when I said this to the radio audience.
The problem with this is what I see is right now we're celebrating people who are doing things for free and vilifying people who charge money for it.
And that was what was happening. The news coverage of the day was always, oh, look, Ann is making masks for people, and she's sewing them herself and just giving them out at the corner, and so that all social distanced and everything like that. So we would do news stories saying, oh, well, Ann is cooking all this food and she's giving it out like a soup kitchen. But Mike is charging people. And we would treat people that would charge, even for a ride to someplace, Uber drivers or door delivery people. Oh, we did news stories celebrating the people who would deliver food to their neighborhood for free. But if you were a DoorDash driver, we got to go after DoorDash. Mark Warner himself said, I think we ought to at least make sure these people are unionized. You heard the city manager in Charlottesville earlier in the program talk about how this budget is now driven by more government unions. The only place where the union movement is still growing is in the government. And even in 1933, FDR said, I think the government unions are a bad idea because there is no breaking point. United Auto Workers Union, they can push and push and push against Ford or GM until GM says, listen, we're just out. We're just not doing this anymore. We'll shut the factory down. And of course, we'll go after them for greedflation. But a public sector union, what going out of business sale is in the future of a city government? Oh, they could certainly file a petition to decertify the local government. We've seen that. It's tried in Martinsville and South Boston and places like that. Reversion votes, go back and just being a town within the county. Usually the counties don't like that very much because that's basically saying, hey, we broke it, you bought it. But so there's so many eddies and currents, but take von Steuben's point to heart. We are the home team. They are the occupying force. We just have to make sure we don't lose. We don't always have to win.
Your Wednesday forecast calls for mostly cloudy skies, a chance of showers or an isolated storm late in the day, afternoon highs in the mid-70s. Wednesday night, chance of showers and storms after midnight, mostly cloudy, a low of 61. Thursday, sunny, afternoon highs around 82. We're partly cloudy and 54 on Thursday night. By Friday, a chance of showers in the afternoon, mostly cloudy, a bit cooler, a high of 73. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now, back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Joe Thomas in the morning. Thank you for joining us here on YouTube and on I guess that we post this to X and to Facebook as well, but it's not part of Facebook video or any thing like that. Joining us now to take us inside the sports headlines is the great one himself. He is Mac McDonald. Good morning, Brother Mac. How are you doing this morning?
Doing good, Joe. I thought you would find time for a little vacation anyway, but that just doesn't happen with you.
I'm sleeping. I'm sleeping right now.
Yeah,
See,
vacations are overrated. Right?
Where would I go? I mean, have you ever seen me in swim trunks? You really don't want to. So it's not a thing.
I understand that. I was just reading a story today about men over 60 can't lose weight and they can't gain muscle. So what am I doing, biking and rowing? And
no, that's followed up by those testosterone ads or whatever this phony baloney stuff that they say. Oh, it's got this miracle secret ingredient, Testofen.
Forget the protein. Forget the. I'm so confused anyway. Just take a shot and forget it. All right, Lakers get a playoff rematch with Denver on Saturday, 110-106 over the Pelicans. If you're just waking up, LeBron had 23, Zion had 40. He left in the fourth quarter with a game tied at 95. A left leg issue. Of course, they're not telling anybody. New Orleans will host Sacramento on Friday. The Kings beat Golden State 118-95. Keegan Murray had 32. We'd like to thank Golden State for participating.
Wow.
That's 3 misses in the past 5 years for the Dubs. All right, the Caps are in. This was great. It was a Philly gamble and a very alert TJ Oshie. This is what happened with about 3 minutes to play.
Ayrton is gone. Flyers gambling in this tie game. They have to beat Washington in regulation. Through center, it's Oshie. Oshie working wide. Fires, he scores! Washington has the 1-goal lead to protect with 3 minutes to go.
It was kind of surprising, actually. Skating down the ice, I didn't even know the goalie was out until looked like Hath was trying to block a shot there. So they obviously needed a regulation win, so it's understanding. But that was a tough battle.
Actually, I was told this after the fact that the former Rangers coach that's now the head coach of the Flyers, he did not know, but they had already been eliminated before they pulled their goalie. It was matters of minutes.
Yeah, he pulled his goaltender for the extra attacker, right? Tortella didn't know that Detroit scored with 3.3 seconds to go to force overtime and at Montreal. And that a minute earlier actually eliminated the Flyers anyway.
Right.
So, but Alex Ovechkin said to the media, we'll take it. Washington and Rangers this weekend at the Garden. The number 10 Virginia baseball team lost its first midweek game in almost 2 years, 7-4 to Old Dominion in front of 4,000 in Norfolk. Cavs had only 7 hits, second lowest total this year. The Monarchs jumped on the Cavs 3 in the first, led 7-1 through 6. UVA did score 3 in the ninth. Near beer, no cigar. Head coach Brian O'Connor on the loss in Norfolk.
Unfortunately, we couldn't put it together really in any facet of the game. Didn't play great defense and didn't pitch up to our capability. And certainly, the story all year has been that we've fallen behind and had great offensive performances. But to their credit, they executed and made big pitches with runners in scoring position. We just couldn't capitalize enough.
Well, did good pitching beats good hitting? I've never heard that before, Matt.
Well, that happens, right? Yeah. George Mason tonight at the Dish. Georgia Tech will be in town for the weekend. Virginia Tech's 15th-ranked softball team shut out the Wahoos 6-0. Cavs are at Duke this weekend. That was a half point in the Smithfield Classic Invitational contest, whatever.
Commonwealth Cup.
Duke's Jeremy Roach has entered the portal and the NBA draft, 106 starts in 4 years. But Roach is the 5th Duke player now to enter the portal, following Christian Reeves, Mark Mitchell, Jalen Blakes, and Jaden Shutt. The Blue Devils also lost Kyle Filipowski and Jared McCain to the NBA draft. Well, Ryan Young is out of eligibility. However, Joe, John Shire has put together the number 1 recruiting class in the country. So Duke's still with the, they're bringing in the young guns. That's the way they want to. That's the way they want to play it. So, it's all good.
Well, the folks in Blue Heaven, they love their youngins. But I know that Coach Kaine was never a big fan of the one and done NCAA rule, but now with the portal, it isn't even one and done. Like, I'm gonna go declare for the NBA draft. Oh no, it's I feel like playing. Maybe Austin seems like a nice town.
Yeah, it could be one and pack your boxes. It could be 2 and pack your boxes. As far as we know. Coming up, a shameless plug for the weekend with Foster and Friends, which you heard all over the state, and looking forward to it. We sat down with Michael Vick, which will be, I'll have a little bit of that tomorrow, just so your audience, Joe, can hear it. Michael was great, talking about his growth at Virginia Tech and what he what he went through as far as recruiting, and how Frank Beamer even when Michael ended up going to prison and then getting out, the football staff and Bud told me this too, and Frank Beamer, they wrote him every other day. A lot of the coaches are dropping him notes and making sure he had mail and making sure he was keeping his head up with everything. I know a lot of people don't feel regarding the dog thing, and we got into that conversation over the weekend with a lot of people, and really? They wanted my opinion, and I said, well, look, first of all, a lot of times opinions come from the uninformed. And I said, I'm on the outside looking in. I said, but of all the documentaries and everything I've seen, if anything, I would say that he just didn't manage his friends. And, he had a lot of friends. You get in a circle sometimes with people. It happens when you grow up, grade school, junior high school. You get around people that you probably shouldn't be around, but yet you really like them. And yet you want to be part of the crowd. It's just kind of, but anyway, that's, the way I looked at it. We're not, of course, we don't talk about that in the interview. Certainly I wasn't going to bring that up. I was happy to, sit down with Michael Vick and talk about his growth at Virginia Tech, really, and how he developed into the NFL player that,
like you said, it's also been, worn out in documentaries. I think it was
the
third or
point.
fourth 40 for 40 on 411.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, definitely well said. I think that's right. I try to watch about 2 documentaries a week. There's a lot of good things out there, whether it's a music doc or, of course, a lot of sports docs and everything. Just trying to catch up on all kinds of things. We had a clip yesterday in our classroom, and I forgot Gordy. I talk a lot about Gordy Hershiser in his class, Joe, but he had he had the entire news clip of the Dale Earnhardt crash, the death, the accident, and how it was covered by the Florida and the national media, but the crash and the race and how it unfolded. I just forgot a lot of that. I forgot just how, that they didn't know for sure, and Dale Jr.'s running to the car, and just the timeline of how that happened. And wow, it was eerie, it was spine tingling, and you just forget sometimes in sports what happened. But it's worth a look.
People forget. Darrell Waltrip was in the booth, and his brother wins his first race ever.
Go Mikey! Go Mikey! Go Mikey! Yeah.
And he is the first one to say, "Gee, I hope Dale's okay."
Exactly.
He was the one. And
good memory. That's exactly right.
And
good memory.
Sterling Marlin still can't get that. He can't shake that. I was watching a piece. You may have had the piece with Sterling Marlin. I think you may have shared it with me, where he was saying he still can't shake his feelings regarding his participation, because he was riding behind Earnhardt on his bumper trying to get past him. And he just is still haunted by that. But it was an interesting subtext to that. We talk about packaging, is that considering his injury, that there are a lot of people said that the performance of the EMS workers and everything else getting what they said was, even at that point, the body into an ambulance, just because of the imagery of, if they didn't put him into the ambulance and drive him to the hospital, even though they knew he was already deceased in the car,
right.
The crowd control would have been impossible. You're talking about 100,000 NASCAR fans. If Dale, at least they saw him leave the ambulance leave the track, and there was something to focus on. But boy, it was.
It was there, and the fact you talk, that's a great memory, Joe. And the workers were so organized. I mean, the guy jumps on top with the drill, and he's taking off the top of the car, and they got guys working on the doors and the wheel. I mean, it was they were well skilled. I mean, very highly skilled in trying to handle that situation. But I had forgotten that, and our students are so young. There's so much they don't remember, and when
they don't remember Dale Jr.'s career, they probably can't remember when Dale Jr. was a driver.
Right. The nature of that is breaking news. In other words, we're trying to teach our students breaking news. How you're going to cover it? What are you going to do? Who you're going to talk to? And you got to be ready for anything. That's the nature of the class. So
if you're doing that, let me ask you this, because this puzzles me. And I go back to things, to moments like the Challenger explosion, another one of those moments where, all the anchors, Peter Jennings, Dan Rather, all these guys had to fly down to Florida, and they were on the desk. Many of them were there because of the teacher, and it was the shuttle with civilian in space, and every school kid in America was watching that morning. But I felt like by 9 o'clock or so, it was time for somebody to say, hey, we've got nothing new here, and we're not going to have anything new for quite some time.
Instead of trying to make up something new, like the Kobe crash.
Right, or the Kobe crash.
It was a crapshoot and a pure speculation. Yeah, good point.
And that idea that we can't be trusted to tune back in a half an hour, because there's, we're just going to sit here at the desk and tell you the same thing we told you 5 minutes ago. I just go back to regular programming. Even if the news is the regular programming, go see if there's something else going on. Anything in the Middle East going on. Dan, let's go back to the studio, and we'll stay here. If anything new transpires, we'll break in. I just feel like they don't feel like the viewer, especially the viewer, has the ability to understand that, hey, okay, here's what's happening. We do it all the time in radio with the storm coverage. Okay, I've told you the power outages. I told you where the storms are. We told you where the microbursts are. Even during the derecho, here in Virginia. You remember that? I mean, the power was
Ugh.
out. The entire Commonwealth had power outages for
I even
a
forget
week
how to
and a half.
pronounce that storm. I forget how to pronounce that storm.
So I mean, we were telling people where to get water, who was doing what, but
Mhm.
I mean, there was only so much at that point. Well, Dominion got 25 people back online yesterday. Well, there's still 3 million without power right now. You couldn't, even something as big as that, you couldn't make it into a rolling story. You had to go back into regular programming a little bit here and there, and I think people appreciated that, especially the music stations. Like, thank goodness, a little Led Zeppelin. I don't, I know that. I
Well,
don't
there's
have
such
power.
there's such a thirst to be first. During the Kobe crash, the BBC ran a picture of LeBron James.
Oh
So
gosh, yeah.
I mean, that's how. And then they had, a lot of reporters had his whole family was on the chopper, and they had, there were so many facts that were wrong. I mean, the thirst to be first can sometimes just be a total debacle. But anyway, getting back to the Earnhardt crash, it was just eerie to watch that coverage again and to relive. And I'm sure if you watch your Charlottesville coverage of what happened on that August day, I bet you shudder a little bit too. So
Sure. Oh, absolutely. No, I mean, how much can you cover? I mean, we're
We're
sending
old.
it out.
We're just old, Joe. We remember too much. That's the thing.
You get off my lawn or get off my podcast. Anyway, Mac, always good stuff, my friend. You have a great morning.
All right. We'll see you. God, we're over the hump today. So I'll see you first thing in the morning.
Your Wednesday forecast calls for mostly cloudy skies, a chance of showers or an isolated storm late in the day, afternoon highs in the mid-70s. Wednesday night, chance of showers and storms after midnight, mostly cloudy, a low of 61. Thursday, sunny, afternoon highs around 82. We're partly cloudy and 54 on Thursday night. By Friday, a chance of showers in the afternoon, mostly cloudy, a bit cooler, a high of 73. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now, back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Joe Thomas in the morning, same place, different distribution network here on YouTube and on Rumble while we wait for the FCC to approve the pickup of the stations you saw on the bottom of the graphic. They're joining us to talk a little about the Senate race. He is a veteran of so many. Well, he's a veteran in the first place, but a veteran of the political wars in Virginia. He is great Chuck Smith, running for U.S. Senate, running in the GOP primary. Chuck, good morning, sir. How are you doing?
Good morning, Joe. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. It's a Wednesday, and everything has been going on. It's interesting because we're sort of starting up our own radio station, and I'm trying to invent things from scratch. It's an interesting world when you have to try to invent all the things that you had grown so accustomed to always just being there, whether it be a studio or licenses and things like that. Talk about that first moment when you went out, and I think you ran for Congress in 2010. So you're a veteran of some of these political battles. Talk about that leap of faith to go out and start seeking folks' support for a political position and your representation.
Well, yes, Joe, my battle scars took me back to 2010 when they needed someone to run against Bobby Scott. He was unbeatable, and no one dared challenge him. No one dared stand up. They came to Chuck Smith, and I said, not only yes, hell yes. That's what battles are for. And obviously, I didn't win that race. We came in a distant third, but we learned a lot from that campaign. And I think Virginians learned a lot as well about Chuck Smith, and that is that I do have courage, I do have stamina, and where there's a fight, then I say bring it on.
So, Chuck, this has been a story last 2 days. You won the GOP nomination to run against this fella, Tim Kaine, who over the weekend said that parents who raise their voice or speak out at school board meetings remind him of January 6th, 2021, and when he was barricaded in his office during what he calls the riots, the insurrection, however he likes to characterize it. I played the actual clip of Terry McAuliffe's campaign imploding on the weight of his attitude towards parents. Is this the same kind of moment where you could hold Tim Kaine up against this and say to the parents of Virginia, this is the attitude of your U.S. Senator?
Well, absolutely. Tim Kaine, I think, is misguided. He is obviously on the wrong track. He is not in favor of parents. He's not, in my opinion, he's not in favor of America. He's in favor of his own policies and money. And these are the types of things, I think, that lead politicians into this category called politicians, that lead them astray. And this is the thing that I'm challenging. This is the thing that I will not stand for. My grandmother taught me a long time ago, you have 2 feet, stand on them, and you voice, speak through it. And that's exactly what I intend to do. That's what I've done all my life. And I think that's the road toward getting this country back. That's the road toward standing up for principles and values.
Well, Chuck, and we see this attitude towards parents, but also now Senator Kaine's fellow in the U.S. Senate from Pennsylvania, Bob Casey, has issued this grand report saying, oh, no, inflation isn't the government's fault. It's greedflation. It's those greedy companies that are charging you more. Is this demagoguery, something that you're concerned with trying to debunk?
Well, yes, the tax and spend policies of the government, the tax and spend policies that are supported by Tim Kaine, these are the types of things, in my opinion, that create inflation, where you have a lack of products in the market, and the government, either through their tax and spend policies, but certainly Mr. Biden and Mr. Kaine believe in this printing money, just print. And when the money overshadows the products that are supposed to be out in abundance, then you have this thing called inflation. These are the things I think we need to remind Americans that we're better than this, and we can be better than this. I remember when I was growing up, I held a job as a newspaper boy, and I would carry newspapers from house to house, door to door at 13 years old. But I always reminded myself that I couldn't go out here and just make money. I couldn't go out in the dirt and in the yard and make money. I didn't have that capacity. If I wanted money, then I had to go out there and do what's called hard work. And that's exactly what I did. That's how I lived my life. And that's what I'm suggesting for Mr. Tim Kaine. He needs to step out of this job, go and do some hard work, and let someone else take that Senate seat, which I intend to be me.
Well, so talk about some of the, because the Senate deals in treaties, and when the subject of greedflation came up, a lot of my listeners said, no, Joe, it's greenflation. This is the whole selling out America to the green agenda, to the Paris Climate Accords, and things like that have never been ratified in the U.S. Senate. Tim Kaine manages to avoid that the way he avoids sometimes having to answer for questions like abortion. So talk about the international landscape and the Senate's role in a lot of these things that we've never taken to a vote, and I don't think would pass muster if they ever actually came to the Senate.
And I certainly would not vote for those things. I'd vote against them. Our president, Donald Trump, mentioned several times that we need to do things that are in America's best interest and not in other nations' best interest. And a lot of the treaties that come before the United States Senate, I think if our senators would take a look at those and examine them through the lens of Donald Trump's statements, what is in America's best interest? A lot of these things would not pass. And I intend not only to support Donald Trump when he is elected president, but certainly I intend to stand by his side and make sure that the Senate handles its responsibility as it should, and not pass laws or pass treaties or ratify treaties that seemingly are in the best interest of other countries rather than this nation.
Well, we'll talk about that for a second, Chuck, because and I'm not like those people in the media, but I'm going to bring up the issue of President Trump and in the ethnic communities, both the Latino community and in the Black community, with stunning numbers, increased in support. He's over 50% the Latino community. He's approaching 30% the Black community, which is up from 4 or 5% in 2016. Talk about what it is about President Trump's message that you're hearing that is different. As you mentioned, your battle scars going back to 2020 and Bobby Scott and these guys, that's changing the attitude in these communities that, I mean, gosh, Chuck, we're in the 60th anniversary of the Great Society. 60 years they've been at this, and we have 4 times as many poor people. Is that message finally getting through into these mostly impoverished communities?
Well, I think what Donald Trump has brought forth that I've seen all of my life, and I've lived all of my life. My grandmother, when she would go out into the garden, she would teach me, simple things like believe in yourself, believe in this country. In every single speech I give, I lead out with that. I believe in America. I think a lot of the things that we're seeing come from people who really have no belief in this country. They think somehow this country is back in the 1860s. We're back in the 1700s, and we're never going to escape that. These are the types of things I think that Donald Trump spoke about. Have faith. Let's make America great again. Let's get back to the time when America thought very highly of itself. We have congressmen, I think up there in Michigan, parading around talking about how great Iran is, or how great Hezbollah, or how great the people on the other side of the Gaza Strip are. How about how great America is? I learned those things as a young boy. I studied those things in the military. I practiced those things in my law career. And I don't know where others have gotten off the boat, but this is America. This is the United States of America. And I think people, certainly here in Virginia, deserve a United States senator who believes in America.
So in the Senate right now and in the House, we're having this battle over funding Ukrainian battles against Russia, and Speaker Johnson now says he has a plan that's mostly going to freeze Russian assets and send that money to Ukraine. But there's still the issue over oversight, and what are we holding the Ukrainians to account for as they use our money? But then also you mentioned the Gaza. Hakeem Jeffries said there will be no vote on this from the Democrats unless they get $9 billion for Hamas and the folks in the Gaza Strip. How do we get past this? Meanwhile, the border still of the United States continues to be an existential mess.
Absolutely. I thought that our President Obama would have learned, and those that supported him would have learned a long time ago. You cannot give money to Iran and countries like that and then turn around and expect them to do anything with their money other than attack the United States, either through their arms or through their words or through their deeds. We have no dog in the fight in Ukraine. We should not be in Ukraine. The greed of the politicians who are concerned about nothing other than money and their own self-rich or enriching themselves, These are the people that are driving this ship there. When I look at the Lindsey McConnell's and of our own party and I'm sorry, Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell's of our own party, I have to question, where are we heading with this? Again, Donald Trump had it right. He understood NATO, and he understood going way, way back to the time when Khrushchev wanted to put missiles in our southern hemisphere, and it was a Democrat president that stood up and said, "No, not on my watch." I think back in the day, we're taking this a bit too far. We have nothing to do with Ukraine. We have not lost American soldiers in Ukraine, and God forbid that we should do that. Our fight is here in the United States. Our fight is getting our homeless off the street, getting our panhandlers off the corners, helping our senior citizens in nursing homes, building our economy, building our military, securing our southern border. That's where our money should go, and not in these distant places where we're being asked to send our sons and daughters to die in foreign wars. I'm totally against that.
Chuck Smith is on with us, running for the U.S. Senate. ChuckSmithVA.com, although I think the graphic is saying .vom. I don't know what part of the internet that is. Somebody better fix the graphic real quick. But Chuck, you mentioned Senator Kaine, who you want to face off with. Talk about that matchup. You've seen him. He's been governor, mayor of Richmond. All of this rich and storied history. What in his record has not been thoroughly used against Senator Kaine to make the case for a change in his office?
Well, I'll tell you, I can talk about his record from here until nightfall, and I think we still will have a lot to talk about. I think it's dismal. I think certainly when he ran as Hillary Clinton's running mate, I think his record then was dismal. Mm-hmm. I liken it to a career soldier, to a novice. Someone like a Chuck Smith who has served in the Marine Corps, who has served as a Navy JAG commander, who has served as a Republican Party chairman, who has served in positions that represent the backbone of our faith in this country. I think Tim Kaine has severely missed that. I know we don't think a whole lot about lawyers, but let me tell you, I practiced law long enough that I understand the Constitution, and it doesn't allow senators to do exactly what they're doing. We want to restore life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for Americans, and we can start with the Constitution by reinforcing our First Amendment rights, Second Amendment rights, our rights under the Ninth and 10th Amendment against government overreach, a power that seems to have just run afield. Mm-hmm. We need to get our country back, and that's what I aim to do as the next United States Senator from Virginia.
Where can people catch up with you? Obviously, we fixed the graphic. It's ChuckSmithVA.com, but you're going to be holding events. Certainly now we head towards March 3rd, when our ridiculous 45-day voting period goes. Talk about your team and being put together to make sure that that come June 18th we know who the winner is, but also where can people get together with you and perhaps even talk with you in person.
Well, a word about ChuckSmith.bomb. I think we are bringing a bomb here. We're going to blow up this cancer that's eating America. We're going to blow up this discontent about America. We're going to reinstall life, liberty, pursuit of happiness for America, for Americans. My website is ChuckSmithVA.com. ChuckSmithVA.com. And let me say a word about this. Tim Kaine's got a lot of money. I'm asking people to invest in America, invest in the faith of this country, invest in the Constitution, invest in Chuck Smith. And unlike anyone else, I will not let you down. We need to get our country back, and that's what I aim to do with my candidacy for the United States Senate. Thank you, Joe.
Well, thank you for joining us, Chuck, and look forward to seeing you on the campaign trail as it gets closer and closer. God bless you, sir, and have a great morning.
You as well. Thank you so much, Joe. Bye-bye.
Your Wednesday forecast calls for mostly cloudy skies, a chance of showers or an isolated storm late in the day. Afternoon highs in the mid-70s. Wednesday night, chance of showers and storms after midnight, mostly cloudy, a low of 61. Thursday, sunny. Afternoon highs around 82. We're partly cloudy and 54 on Thursday night. By Friday, a chance of showers in the afternoon, mostly cloudy, a bit cooler, a high of 73. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now, back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Joe Thomas in the morning here on Rumble and on YouTube. And Philip writes in to the YouTube channel, every time I hear those drums, I look for Colonel Hogan to come out of the camera. Hogan! The song is actually called the Virginia Patrol March. I chose it because it's titled the Virginia Patrol March, but hey, Hogan's Heroes was a hit TV show, and God bless anyone who can sit there. And there are several places I would love to go, Philip, since you brought it up. There are several places I would love to go if I could go in history just to be a fly on the wall, and one of those places would be in the network pitch room, because they have pitch rooms, and the network executives sit there and hear from erstwhile show producers. And okay, we're going to hear from and I forget the name of the fellow who produced Hogan's Heroes, but okay, Bob, you got 10 minutes. Wow us. Well, Mr. TV executive, we have a TV program, a sitcom that we're going to base in a German prison camp, and the comic relief will be provided by the Nazis. And I want to be, I just, for, if Quantum Leap could actually be real, and I could jump into the chamber with Sam Beckett, not the reboot one, but and I could go back and into the head of that network executive saying, funny Nazis, I mean, it works for Mel Brooks, so why not? But, just somebody pitching. It's like, yeah, we're going to have a weekly sitcom where the Nazis are the comic relief. Wow, what a world. Greg writes in through the YouTube comments channel, Kaine, the master of mediocrity at best. Yes, I know we have folks working on a professional pyramid paving spot as well. On the subject of oops, I did it again, as we told you and we talked about with Chuck as well, Tim Kaine has compared parents at school board meetings to January 6th rioters. And we know that the FBI was already targeting parents anyway for insurrectionist behavior. And I remember on January 6th, that I thought the use of that word was very interesting because it's an arcane word. Up until January 6th, January 7th of 2021, you nary heard the phrase insurrection, but there were key, and this is, as Chuck was talking about, the lawyers, there's a key point, there's a very fine point to using the word insurrection. And it's because it's clearly laid out both in the Constitution, but also in legal precedents that come out of the Supreme Court, so that you can say well, you're an insurrectionist. I had the same thing happen. I don't think I have the photograph here. It's amongst some of the Facebook archives, but the picture of me, screen capped from both NBC, CBS, Fox, and CNN, all had live cameras shooting the August 12th riots here in Charlottesville, and I'm there trying to cover it. And bless the technology, I had my Facebook feed. I had a fellow in the newsroom, John Peterson, was in the newsroom taking my live feed from my Facebook Live, and I was there just dual purposing, trying to tell the people on Facebook Live what was going on, but also then John was getting the audio onto the radio station. And actually, I believe one of those awards back there was won at the cost of several $100 worth of clothing that had to be burned because I couldn't get the smell of the pepper spray and the tear gas out of them. But the narrative after January 6th, advertisers, sponsors of my radio program started to get that screen cap of me in the crowd trying to cover the news events of August 12th, 2017. And I'm not saying this to blow my own horn or to say, look at me, aren't I special? But this is what they do to everybody. This is, if they can do it to Donald J. Trump and they can do it to Joe Thomas in the morning, they're going to do it to you. And this was the point I was making about von Steuben's point that, they're going to have their wins. They're going to have the Battle of Brandywine. But you have to just keep fighting because they are the occupying force. They being the authoritarian left, they are the occupying force, and we just have to keep fighting. It's not about winning all the battles. We just have to not lose. We have to just keep fighting, keep coming at them, keep holding them to account. When Tim Kaine says that parents speaking out at their school board meetings are akin to the January 6th rioters, we have to, as restoratives, as people who want to get back to where a parent can say, hey, I don't want my kid to see that, and not to be called an insurrectionist for it. I mean, that's what's happening now. If you say, hey, I'd like to have some say over what's in my kid's school library, well, you must be one of those MAGA extremists. And that those epithets are used to immediately dismiss your citizenship. It is this epithetical dismissal of your ability to have a say in the matters at hand. And be careful, because at some point, they're going to start using lawfare against you. They're going to come and say, well, you're an insurrectionist, so therefore we're taking your kids. Or you can't spend any money on anything. You can only spend your money. Remember, we're talking about digital currencies and things like that, but unbanking is a thing that's happening now. We're not talking about a fanciful future where the Federal Reserve has issued a digital currency that they can turn on and off with a 1 or a 0. I mean, this unbanking is happening right now. So your ability to interact in your communities are already at the beck and call of the people who will call you an insurrectionist for arguing at a school board meeting, which is hardly insurrection, nor does it reach the appropriate level of scrutiny for it. But once the label is stuck to your lapel, now we don't have to listen to Joe Thomas in the morning. Now we can get rid of him. And that had nothing to do with the end of the radio program, by the way. But the argument was made that Joe Thomas shouldn't be sponsored. Look, he was a participant. He's a Nazi. Not the comic Nazis that you saw on Hogan's Heroes or Blazing Saddles. The modern Virginia Nazi. Look at him. He's there in the crowd. He's obviously 6. One of the things I noticed in those pictures, why are the white supremacists of America all like 5'5"? There's a philosophy or a psychology report to be done in that. Why is a guy who's only 6 feet tall towering over all of these white supremacists? But there I was. I know this. I know it was visible. I went, I looked, and I screen capped some of the pictures. But the dismissers, those who don't want you to have a say, did the same thing. And they said, look, here's Joe Thomas. He's participating in the riots. I was covering it. And the defense of their position was, no, there was a media place. You don't see any other local media down there, do you? There was supposedly their argument is that there was a media corral that I was not in, and that I was actually on the corner of 4th and Market Street in Charlottesville, that I must have been a participant, because otherwise I would have been in the authorized media filing center. Well, first off, the idea of that is as ridiculous as the White House press corps. But these are all matters for more days. Coming soon, student loan cancellation. Hopefully we can visit with Kim Fletcher from Moms for America on this Kaine issue, because because it's quietly caught on, it wasn't as big a flashpoint, but I think it's a more egregious statement than Terry McAuliffe's statement on the government. I mean, you tell me, when you see Tim Kaine make his statement about children's education, do we have the
refusing to engage with parents. In fact, in Fairfax County this past week, we watched parents so upset because there was such sexually explicit material in the library they had never seen. It was shocking. And in fact, you vetoed the bill that would have informed parents that they were there. You believe school systems should tell children what to do. I believe parents should be in charge of their kids' education.
Mr. McAuliffe, 30 seconds.
So first of all, this shows how clueless Glenn Youngkin is. He doesn't understand what the laws were because he's never been involved here in helping Virginia. But it was not. The parents had to write to veto books, Glenn, not to be knowledgeable about it. Also take them off the shelves. And I'm not going to let parents come into schools and actually take books out and make their own decision.
You vetoed it.
So, yeah, I stopped the bill that I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
So there is that moment, the famous moment where Terry McAuliffe's political career and future imploded. But Tim Kaine is much in the same way. And I think Tim Kaine's statements are much worse. I think Tim Kaine's statements are much worse when you compare and you start using words like insurrection there. So we'll continue to dig on this. We may be the only ones, who knows. But plenty more to get into tomorrow morning. And